Hey everybody, welcome to week one. Hopefully you all had a chance to check out the syllabus overview video, and I sent that out Friday. If you didn't, it's right here. Watch this video. I kind of go over the highlights and explain parts of the syllabus and the Canvas course shell a little better. Of course, for details, go to the actual syllabus itself. Maybe follow along with it while you watch the video. So the purpose of this video is to just kind of give you an overview of what we're doing this week and how it fits into the larger class. So in the syllabus overview video, when talking about the class, I defined external communication as the ways in which organizations build relationships with their external constituents and convey their mission with their external constituents. And so this week we're looking at some macro level ideas such as organizational narrative and campaigns, and the role that they play in external communication. So Walter Fisher, a sociologist, argues that we are homo narrans, that we are native storytellers as humans, and that we are willing as humans to even suspend our disbelief to engage in a really good narrative. We get emotionally involved in narratives, and we even can become co-authors as we converse with other people who are creating their own personal narratives, or in the case of external communication, as organizations build their narratives. And so that's what this Flowers reading, one of your two readings for this week, really talks about. The different ways, I think she outlines 5 or 6 different types of narratives that organizations use when engaging stakeholders. So that's a really useful and interesting reading. And as you read it, as is going to be the case with a lot of stuff in this class, you're going to be like, yes, I know this, but now we're putting a name to it and diving deeper into how you can then do this when you go out and get a job in the communication field. The lesson combines both readings, it bridges both readings, and again, like I mentioned in the syllabus overview, I will often in the lesson point you to different pages in the readings to kind of emphasize a point that I'm making. So I always recommend watching the lesson first and then going deeper with the readings, if that makes sense. So there is a second reading. It's a chapter on campaigns, and that is listed on your syllabus. Your discussions and activities for this week. First, you're going to introduce yourselves to each other. So I just have you guys sharing some information and then responding to 2 classmates. If you can, post a photo, your favorite photo of yourself, and tell us what it says about you. Is there anything else you want to know? Post that too, so that way, because we're not really seeing each other face to face, we'll be able to put a face to a name. So always get to know a little bit about each other. And here's with the first a discussion and then an activity, although it doesn't really matter what order you do them in, taking a deeper dive into the content. So I mentioned that narratives can be stories that either we tell or organizations can tell about themselves. So really the narratives that organizations create will often relate to who they are, like what is their organizational identity, what is their mission, what are their organizational values, and then they weave that mission and those values into a story that tells you about who they are. Okay, and so they do that by building campaigns around it. So you have to have a solid narrative. When you have a solid narrative, you can build a campaign around it. So a campaign is a strategic long-term endeavor communicative endeavor undertaken by an organization that tells its story, connects with stakeholders. It's often multimedia. It is often it's never just a one-time thing, right? It's often prolonged. So it can be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And then if they're really popular, even longer. So the Geico Gecko is a perfect example. Started out as probably a one-time commercial campaign, not more than a commercial, as a one-time campaign, print advertisements, television spots on their website, but then it extended into a campaign, and then multiple campaigns, because we're still seeing those campaigns going today. And so for your discussion, I ask you to look at provide an example of storytelling by a public brand that relates to one or more of the 5 approaches to storytelling. And so you'll probably find this in a campaign. So you'll probably, if you go online, and I don't even want to say any because I want to see what you come up with, but I ask you to provide an example of it. So if you have a link to it or a screen capture of it, and always when the discussions, use a quote from the reading and respond to 2 classmates. So the best discussions will be a combination of your own thoughts plus that are supported by the text. And so that will get you kind of familiar with both the concept of campaigns and narratives. And then your second assignment is looking specifically at Penn State Abington's strategic communication narrative. So there is some background information about Penn State Abington Stratcoms. Let me back out of here. Oh, the Wi-Fi is super slow. All right, well, we'll stay in the discussion until my computer backs us out of it. So based on a sampling of strategic communication materials, such as the Abington website, the company overview that I'll show you in a few minutes, what narrative do you think they're producing about Penn State? So if you, and at one point you were, a prospective student coming to Penn State, what's the story that Penn State Abington is telling? What's the story that they're creating to convey our missions, our goals, our values, and that makes us stand out from other higher education institutions, either in the Philadelphia area, in Pennsylvania, or at all? Like, what makes us unique? What's our story? And so I want you to identify based on what you see in external communication materials, what is the narrative that we're telling. And then I want you to either think of a different narrative. Maybe you think their narrative is off base and you can think of a better one that you as a student identify with, and you're like, no, that's not our story. This is our story. Or if you think that the narrative that they currently share is spot on, what's a newer, interesting way that you can tell it? So a lot of times web content can just be straightforward, fact. But thinking of the different ways of telling narratives that you learned from this week, what might be a more interesting way to tell our story? And not limited to web content. That was just an example I just gave. But how can you either build a new narrative for Penn State Abington or tweak the narrative by telling it in a different way? And that's what this assignment is all about. So I would say that's probably going to take you 3 paragraphs, if not more, to do that. And so in addition to using the externally available information such as brochures from Penn State Abington or the website or any other publicly available materials, because we're working directly with StratComms, they've also provided us with some background information as well. And so you can really read these. Some of these, like the visual identity, visual and editorial standards, these are more rules and guidebooks for if you work for StratComms, how do you portray Penn State? What are the rules in terms of logo usage and stuff like that? This is their budget, which you don't need for right now, but when you build your campaigns, you will. Strategic commute, this is the one. This is the overview. So this talks about their mission and some of the activities they've done. And StratComms just relaunched this year. It used to be University Relations, now StratComms. And this is kind of just like the different strategies and tactics and missions and ideas that they have for their relaunch. So these 2 will probably be pretty useful to you for this week's assignment. When you build your campaigns, which are due next Sunday by midnight, these will all become very useful. So that is about it for this week. If you have any questions, please let me know. Everything in this module is due Sunday by midnight. And I think that's it. So reach out to me if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you in the classroom. One more thing, I will participate in the personal introduction discussion, but by and large, you won't see me active in the other discussions. Those are places for you guys to get out your ideas and talk with each other. I will go in when I grade them, and I always will leave comments, anything ranging from great job, thanks, to something more detailed. But so if you don't see me interacting, that's not a cue for you to not interact. Rather, I've created these as spaces for you guys specifically. My voice is in the lesson, my voice is in the grading, my voice is in these videos. This is really the place for your voice. But because you should probably know stuff about me too, I will also post the personal introduction. So truly, that's it. Have a great week, and if you have any questions, reach out. I'll see you in the classroom.